Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Saturday. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, the very first story I came across this morning was about Aaron Carter, or more precisely, Aaron Carter's son, Princeton LYRIC, and the mother of his child, Melanie Martin. This story is just coming out. Like I said, it's Saturday morning, 3 a.m. here. I've been looking over this story for the last 2 hours, hour and a half about. And TMZ broke this story. And I usually look at I just don't sit here and talk about one article. I go through all the information I could find. So I pulled up all the other articles that had the same story, and there's not much information. All the other articles, there's about half dozen other media platforms that are talking about this, and they all have exactly the same information that TMZ, almost word for word, that TMZ had. So there's very little information about this. Okay, when I first came across this, I wasn't going to talk about it. I thought it was just it was ridiculous, and it was kind of trash, and I wasn't going to talk about it, even though it does have to do with drugs and recovery from my point of view. And the more I looked at, the more I thought about it, I'm kind of ambivalent about this. Let me fill you in. Okay, so just in the last day or two, this is Princeton, his 2-year-old son, Princeton LYRIC, you're not hearing me wrong, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit. His 2-year-old child, that's what it says specifically in this article. Not only does it say his 2-year-old son filed this wrongful death lawsuit, but it says his 2-year-old son believes, Princeton LYRIC, believes that there was a wrongful death in his father's passing away. That's what this article says, word for word. So when I first read this, of course, how are you going to look at this? You're going to look, obviously the mother filed this lawsuit to get money. That's the first thing I thought. And I wasn't even going to talk about this. But then the more I looked into it, the more I thought about it, and similar circumstances, once again, with my life, I'm kind of ambivalent. I could kind of see some points being made here. Okay, like I said, so Princeton LYRIC, the 2-year-old son, is on paperwork, he's the one that's filed this lawsuit. We all know he's not the one, but it's in his name, and it actually says Princeton LYRIC believes that his father's death. So this 2-year-old boy believes that his father passed away wrongfully. Okay, and they're suing Walgreens and the doctors and everybody else for prescribing oxycodone and oxycodone, hydrocodone. It's all pretty much the same drug. If hydrocodone and oxycodone are both the actual drug that's in Oxy and Vicodin. I'll just leave that there. And so when I first looked at this story, I just figured, well, obviously Aaron Carter's baby mama needs some money. That's how I looked at it at first. So I looked into it further, and first of all, his cause of death, Aaron Carter's cause of death, was from a combination from Xanax and huffing and drowned, which led to drowning. Okay, so his actual death didn't have anything to do with either one of these drugs. Xanax is not a painkiller. It's I forgot what we used to call them, but anyway, it's a sedative. It's like a tranquilizer, I guess. I can't remember the exact word, but they're benzos. They were called I couldn't even remember what we used to call them. Benzos is what they were called. And so when I first looked at this article, I was like, this is just kind of trash. This is just the baby mama trying to, for lack of a better description of her, trying to get money. But then I started looking. I wanted to see, well, did Aaron Carter have any actual physical ailments? And he didn't. It says in this lawsuit that the doctors and Walgreens and everybody else should have known about his addiction problems and his psychiatric problems, that they were red flags and they shouldn't have prescribed it to him. And there's kind of a point there. I'm gonna tell you about my situation, and it's exactly like I said. I do these stories about Aaron Carter and Bam Margera, right? Now, originally, I didn't know anything about either one of these two guys, but the more I did these stories and I looked into their addictions, you know, Bam Margera, of course, is still alive and dealing with his issues successfully so far. I have so much in common with both these guys, and I'll fill you in a second here. So here's the situation. So according to this lawsuit, these doctors were prescribing painkillers, heavy-duty painkillers, to somebody who really didn't have any physical ailments whatsoever. So that's pretty much the definition of a drug dealer right there. You know, if it's not for the one, I'll link down below. The one physical ailment I could find is back in the early 2000s, I think it was. There's a few pictures of Aaron Carter, and he looked kind of gaunt and drawn out, and he talked about this. He said how he had a hiatal hernia, and I was diagnosed with a hiatal hernia too. And he said he was in so much pain, and it led to an eating disorder, which is what led him to look all skinny. And he says that he's not a methamphetamine addict, and I believe that part of it. This reminds me exactly what I used to do. I used to lie 50%, and I tell 50% truth to cover things up. You know, I believe he was an addict. He just wasn't a methamphetamine addict. You know, so that's what he was kind of deflecting was what he was doing there. From what I found, a hiatal hernia, I mean, I couldn't imagine taking oxycodone or hydrocodone for a hiatal hernia. In my case, some people might have suffered, you know, it led to indigestion and heartburn. I couldn't sleep at night. But for severe pain, no. So, you know, so I actually see Princeton or the mother's point here, you know. But let me talk about what happened to me. I had 2 back surgeries. I drove a truck, a hardwood flooring truck, and it led to first one disc in my back being herniated. The disc actually became broken. It actually ruptured, the disc in my back, and the pain was incredibly severe. I had 2 operations, one in 1999 and one in 2000, and they were workman's comp cases. Now, I was already an addict at this point. I was 34 years old, and I was already a full-blown cocaine and crack addict. I had already been fired from one job. One of my first driving jobs for a dirty urine, and I got this job driving a truck, and I hurt my back. So I was already a full-blown addict at this point. It's very similar to Aaron's case here, and the doctor rightfully started prescribing me very heavy duty because the pain was just, I couldn't even walk. I actually crawled on my hands and knees to the bathroom before one operation. Like I said, I had one operation in 1999 and one in 2000. After the operations, though, after the operations, there was no pain. There was a lot of numbness, but no pain. The doctor continued to prescribe me Vicodin, 20 Vicodin, every single week for 3 years, even though there was no pain. Now, some of this, I'm kind of ambivalent about this too, because I feel like, you know, in my judgment, it was my fault because I was lying to the doctor. I mean, people could say I was under the influence. You know, I was under the influence. Plus, I was suffering from the disease of addiction. So, you know, it was up to the doctor to not prescribe these to me. But I mean, I was very good at lying, manipulating. You know, so I can't honestly blame this on the doctor. Like I said, so after the operations, there was no pain, and every time I'd see him, I'd go to an appointment. Now, there's times I would go to appointments, like I said, and I was already a full-blown addict. And I would go in there. I told you guys in other videos how every single morning I drink like a half pint of Jägermeister when I first woke up, or at least 2 shots of it. So I would go into the doctor's office on these appointments, smelling like liquor, looking like I hadn't slept all night. I would cancel appointments, and then I would call up later that afternoon to have him prescribe me painkillers. You know, so there was definite red flags. And he kept prescribing. I just call up I'd wait 7 days. I take all 20 painkillers in 24 hours, the whole bottle. And then I would call, I'd have to wait 7 days, and I would go onto the street and buy heroin or whatever. And I'd wait 7 days, and then I'd call up for another prescription, and workman's comp paid for these, you know, these everything. Here's the thing, though. As soon, the day that workman's comp was settled, that lawsuit was settled, the doctor would not even talk to me You know, he wouldn't, not, I mean, literally would not talk to me, wouldn't see me, cut off all communication. You know, he said, the case is over, we're done, we have nothing to discuss. And, you know, 3 years later, he cut off the painkillers, and then I went full time to the streets to get the drugs. I mean, should he have seen? Should he have smelled my breath? Should he, you know, he should have known. You know, I'd go in there and I'd pretend to be in pain, and you know, I'd laugh 1 minute. I'd be sitting there laughing and talking about this or that, and then I'd be like, oh, you know, it hurts so much, doctor, you know. And I'd call up. It got to the point where I really didn't even have to pretend that I was in pain. They just expected me to call every 7 days and get these painkillers for 3 years. Like I said, and then as soon as the money ran out, as soon as the workman's comp case was over and settled, the day was settled, that was it. No more painkillers, no more anything. Wouldn't even talk to me. I feel like some of that was out of guilt because he knew my situation at that time. You know, he knew that I'd become a full-blown addict. Like I said, I went in there smelling of booze. I went in there looking like hell. You know, so when I read this article, and it says there, you know, as far as I could see, Aaron Carter wasn't suffering from any real physical ailments. I'm not a doctor or anything, but I can't see anything that would validate prescribing him full-blown painkillers. So the baby's mother does have a point here, but the general look of this lawsuit and everything, it looks like trash. It really does. It looks like they're just trying to get money. Plus the fact that when Aaron passed away, it had nothing to do at that moment, at that day, on that day, his death had nothing to do with either one of those drugs or Walgreens or the doctors. It had to do with Xanax and huffing. You know, so how this lawsuit, you know, it looks like trash to me, it really does. But I can understand the whole being angry with the doctors and Walgreens, because the same thing happened to me. I don't blame them. I take responsibility for going in there every week. I knew what I was doing was dishonest and wrong and was probably getting me in deeper trouble, but I kept doing it. You know, some people could say it was because I was under the influence of the disease of addiction. But I think it's more important for me in my recovery to take full responsibility for that. You know, I'm the one that was going in there lying and making up stories and working out how to get my next week's drugs. So, I mean, I can't, you know, I'd sit there and cry that I was in pain, and I'd keep calling up until he gave them to me. Should the doctor have known? Should he have not prescribed them to me? Probably, yes. But then again, there's some people that are actually in pain. You know, so I don't think it's the doctor's fault in the end. It was me. In my case, I take responsibility for it. So that's the story for today. The links will be down below. Like I said, they all basically, at this point, this story is just breaking, and they all say the exact same thing. So I'll be back later with another video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have a good Saturday.